Good morning. I'm Jenny Wolfe. I am the city's historic preservation planner, and today is July 1st, and we are here on site at the historic Waterworks building in the city of St. Augustine in Davenport Park. And this building was the pumping station for the city's first waterworks system. It was constructed and up and running by 1898. And what we're here to do today is to talk about preserving this building, doing the rehabilitation work, the grant process that we've been through, and as well as to get some expert input from Rick Gonzalez, who is the immediate past president of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. He's also the vice chair of the Florida Historic Commission, and he is a preservation architect and has been for many, many years and has worked on many significant projects. So Rick, if you'd like to join me, I'd like to let you introduce yourself, and first of all, thank you for spending some time with us today. I know you've got some private clients you're meeting with. You also sit on the board, the University of Florida board that's working on rehabilitation of Government House, and so you have some work there that you're doing later today as well. So I appreciate you fitting this into our schedule.
Thank you, Jenny, and it's great to be here in St. Augustine this morning. It's a beautiful day, July 1st, and I'm also visiting today with Linda Dixon of the University of Florida on the Government House. We have a couple of things we're looking at, the courtyard and some of the lighting features as that project continues to be completed in time for the 450th celebration in September. So very exciting what's going on here in St. Augustine. And so I'm glad I've had this opportunity to meet with you and to tour the building and this location at the north end of the city.
And how did you first become involved with this project? Because we had a conference here for the Florida Trust. I think it was before you were president, but you were president the following year. But we did a charrette. Can you talk about what that charrette process was and what that could mean to this and other projects in the state of Florida?
Sure, Jenny. This is a project that's dear and near to me because it's we've done 7 of these charrettes in Florida, and the Florida Trust. Myself and Ramon Trias, a fellow board member, we started this 7 years ago, and we've done them in Boynton Beach, West Palm Beach, Tampa, St. Augustine, Orlando, Gainesville. And this is the first one that's actually gotten funded. So it's just wonderful that the hard work of volunteers, both from the city. I remember when we did this charrette in 2013 here in the city, you were involved. Your wonderful city manager, John Reagan, was involved too, and some of the trustees and other architects and just the general public. You know, about 30 people participated on the Friday morning of the conference at City Hall, trying to come up with ideas for not only the building, but for this important site. This site anchors the north end of the city. It's at the intersection where all the traffic comes in from the island too, and as US 1 and San Marcos leads you into the historic core. So it's on the edge or on the perimeter, and it needs to be a site that not only protects the historic building, but protects the flavor and the history of St. Augustine. So it's really great that some of that initial work, that report, that you were able to use that, plus all of your expertise in grant writing, to go to the Florida Historical Commission, where I sit on, and to be able to get ranked number 5 out of 30, which is an honor, right? Because you got funded for this year. So very happy that all of that volunteer work over 2 years ago has led to this point now where you're starting the selected demolition and stabilization of this project.
Thank you. Well, it definitely has been quite exciting to begin watching the construction this week. How unusual is it for a city of our size to commit such funds and in-kind services for these grants? Right now, this first grant is a small matching grant. It's about $50,000 grant funds. We had to match that with $50,000 and then some. We've done some in-kind services such as Florida Public Archaeology Network has done a study, some GPR on the site. We've got city crews that are going to be removing some insignificant material from the building. Aaron Minigan and I are looking at adaptive use planning for the building as preservation planning. So we've got some in-kind services and cash match for the small matching, but really, as you mentioned with the special category grant, those are the big projects, those are the big dollar projects. And the city committed $175,000 cash to get over a $500,000 project, which we will begin immediately following this. There will be major stabilization. How important is that in a community for it to really put its money where its mouth is? And is that unusual for local governments of our size, of about 12,000 citizens?
Well, that is truly amazing. I remember when Governor Scott got first elected, he was not aware about the economic impact of historic preservation, and a group of us went to Tallahassee and actually met with him and shared with him a report that was done by the Florida Trust and the University of Florida explaining the impact. For every dollar that we spend, $8 are created in impact, and that's a significant amount of money. And so his 2 terms have been about economic development for Florida. So I raised my hand, and others have raised their hands saying, well, wait a second, so is historic preservation. It's a way to use economic development through preservation. For example, we've got 6 painters here today who are going to be working in the space. Your work too, and the work of others, it's putting people in Florida to work, doing something very, very valuable. Being able to restore buildings in a step-by-step process. When we look at the grant process, and we get a lot of grants, we had a period there when the economy was horrible of 3 years with no funding. And then in the election cycle, we got $16 million 2 years ago, and we got, I think, over $3 million this year. So that's pretty good. The last couple of years, we've been doing very, very good. One of the things that I look as a commissioner on the board is, where is the local investment? How big is that local investment? Is it just a minimal, nominal amount? How's the application done? And is it seriously done? Is it well done? Is it showing that there's going to be a commitment of volunteer time, of staff time, and of money from the local community? Very, very important. And I particularly, even though I'm from South Florida, I'm a Floridian. I want to see the work done in small towns in Florida. I'm very concerned about our small towns in Florida, especially places as special as St. Augustine that might be under threat from development on the edges of St. Augustine. So to help places like that are making an effort, like you said, 12,000 people live in the city. That's a small city, it's not a very large city, but St. Augustine is a leader in the state of Florida when it comes to preservation efforts.
And we're inundated with several million tourists. The numbers fluctuate from 5 to 8 million tourists. So while we do have a small permanent population, we have a heavy carrying capacity that we address. And how do you think a building like this on the outer edge of our historic colonial core, our main tourist focus, how can this really blend in the two? Or is it something that we want to look at being more about the community, more about tourism? Do you have any initial ideas on what that connection would be?
Well, from observing the city, right, the ancient city that you have here, you look at the core of the city, and it's a fantastic city. I mean, the public rooms of the Flagler College, City Hall, and the Casa Monica, one of the greatest outdoor spaces in North America. When you go in front of the government house, the original town square, this is the oldest place in North America. When you go up to the Castillo, when you go in St. George's, or some of the beautiful new streets that the city has recently completed, these complete streets, you can see that the core of the historic area is in solid, very, very good hands, right? Like Allstate says, it's very well protected. You don't have to worry about those areas. What you do need to worry about are the edges. And you have to be very serious about the edges, because there's a lot of threat that you might not see on a daily basis, but you'll start seeing over a period of time. And from my experiences throughout Florida, in Miami Beach, Winter Park, Tampa, Bel Air, if you don't address the edges and the corridors coming into the historic quarters, a generation from now, you're going to be very sorry, because you're going to lose that quality. You'll have new hotels or new buildings coming in, or poorly done renovations that are going to erode the edge. So it's almost like a cancer in a way. Mm-hmm. You're a doctor now, as a doctor surgeon watching the cancer. You want to make sure that the city, with this building and this wonderful site here and the other building next to it, makes a point here, so that they're telling others, they're telling developers, they're telling local people that own buildings, we have a high standard in St. Augustine, and St. Augustine is only 5% of what I call of the built environment out there. So if someone comes to work in St. Augustine, they need to meet these high standards. If not, go work in the other 95% of communities in Florida that don't value historic preservation and good urban design like you do. So This North City anchor is tremendous opportunity, not only for St. Marcos, but also for US 1 behind me, and also for the island. When people come here, they see the carousel, they see the library, they see this park setting with these two buildings. Hopefully there's a new road connecting both buildings in the appropriate way. Hopefully things are done in an urban design fashion, not just for automobiles, but for people, so people can enjoy this corner and this property for many generations to come.